Okay, well, good. I was about to say good morning, but it's afternoon. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Suzanne Sierra. I'm the Senior Program Manager with the St. Louis Mosaic Project. And the St. Louis Mosaic Project is a regional initiative of the World Trade Center of St. Louis, and we are under the umbrella of the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. And our goal is to transform St. Louis into the fastest growing US metropolitan area for immigration by the year 2025. So our goal is to attract and retain the foreign-born population. We focus on connecting them to resources to help them succeed. And one of those areas is if they are entrepreneurs. And so that is why we are here. That is why we have organized this event. We're happy to see our panelists. And with that, I'm going to, I want to thank Venture Cafe for partnering with us, for creating this space for all of us to gather virtually, and for all of our panelists who are taking time today to share their entrepreneurial journey. We're going to hear a lot of really great information. So I'm going to turn it over now to our moderator, Gabriela Ramirez Arellano, who is the new Director of Entrepreneurship for Cortex and the Executive Director for the Center for Emerging Technologies. Yes, let's all give Gabriela a hand. She's joining us in her second week. And so I'm very excited for this conversation on leveraging cultural competencies for entrepreneurs and hearing how you have found success in St. Louis. So with that, I will turn it over to Gabriela.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for our panel discussion organized by the team at the St. Louis Mosaic Project, as well as the team at Venture Cafe St. Louis. As Suzanne said, my name is Gabriela Ramirez Arellano, and from my accent, you can probably tell that I'm originally from a Spanish-speaking country. So I'm originally from Guanajuato, Mexico, and I returned to the St. Louis region in 2016. I wear many hats, not only in my new role at Cortex and the Center for Emerging Technologies, but also as the Executive Director at the Basa Foundation, and as an entrepreneur myself and co-owner with my husband of Don Emiliano's in O'Fallon, Missouri, our family Mexican restaurant. And above all that, I'm a huge supporter and advocate for entrepreneurs in the region. So I was really excited and honored to be asked to moderate today's panel to share the stories and insight of Raj Singh of Waylit, Rick Shang of Vulpes Corporation, and of course, Ola Ayani of Claim Academy. Along with all of you, I can't wait to learn more about how they have successfully navigated the business landscape in St. Louis. In fact, past research from the St. Louis Mosaic Project highlights that foreign-born individuals in the St. Louis region are 60% more likely than native-born to start a business. So let's welcome our panelists, and then I will ask each of them to introduce themselves and share their business pitch so that they can give us some insight on their business and the industry they're in, as well as model a pitch for you, which is a much needed asset for any business owner. So let's just jump in and start with Raj. Hi, Raj, how are you?
Good, Gabriela. Hi, everyone. It's just been a long day. Sorry about this. I've been sitting on the seat since the last 8.5 hours now. So if I sound a little murky, then just pardon me for it. I'm doing well. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Waylit. We are a company that actually helps employers hire foreign nationals more easily. So if an employer is looking to hire somebody on H-1B, L-1, or sponsor a green card, we actually take that process away from the HR teams and make it super simple for them to go through it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. What about you, Rick Shang of Vulpes Corporation? Welcome.
Well, thank you, and thanks everyone for attending. And I'm Rick, and I'm the founder of Vulpes. And what we do is probably not as exciting, but we just mostly just bring in-house R&D, manufacturing, and a regulatory capacity together to develop new materials. And right now, our focus is really about agriculture. Our flagship product we're working on is a nanomaterial that can absorb nutrients, water from the soil and then got transported into the plants to release them inside the plant while the materials break down. Mostly just making our usage of resources a lot more efficient. Those are our right now agenda, but in the long run, we want to hopefully eventually one day onshore our pharmaceutical manufacturing processes to make sure that antibiotics or ibuprofen are actually manufactured in the US onshore. But that's what I do. Look forward to hearing about others.
That's pretty amazing, Rick. You said it's not exciting, but it sounds awfully difficult and very involved. So thank you for that. What about you, Ola, from Claim Academy? Welcome.
You might be on mute.
You're muted, Ola.
Okay, can you hear me? I apologize about that, Gabriela. I said mine is not as exciting like Rick and Raj. So I am the founder of Claim Academy, which is a software programming bootcamp here in St. Louis. Is one of the top best coding bootcamps, top 40 in the US and the top 60 in the world. And we're here in St. Louis. That is according to Switch Report and Cost Report online. What we basically do is we help someone who has little or no background as a software developer, and in 12-week period, we're able to turn them into a developer. We've had people now from 48 states that have moved to St. Louis to Claim Academy to learn to become a developer, and also has left. What makes us also very unique is that in that 12 weeks, we're able to issue transcript like a university. So we are approved by the Missouri Department of Higher Education to issue transcript to people, as well as we have partnership with the Department of Defense and VA, which allows veterans to move all across America and come to St. Louis to learn to become software developers and cyber professionals. So that's it about me. Not as sexy as Rick and Raj.
I don't know about all that because you're changing lives. So thank you for that. And as I mentioned earlier, research has shown that the immigrant community here in St. Louis is very entrepreneurial, and we're seeing an increase in the number of immigrant businesses here in the region. So let's begin the conversation there and better understand how you all got started. Rick, let's start with you. Can you briefly share how you decided to start your own company?
Oh, me? Well, thank you. Well, I'm too honored to go first because I really don't think my thoughts are worthy to go first, but thank you. So I do want to say, very much unfortunately, my startup has nothing to do with a good idea. And I can say publicly, I have no idea what my company is doing, at least technically. And the reason for doing a startup for me, especially in St. Louis, is because I really see a wide open opportunity in St. Louis and in largely unique to St. Louis. And that is St. Louis has a fantastic and also cheap manufacturing infrastructure that's waiting to be utilized. And it also has an army of executives and professionals who I recruited who were already experienced in the traditional industries, but they want to find new opportunities, especially moving into advanced manufacturing and especially new enterprises. And that's how I decided to pull people together, old and new friends together. And the general idea is we have some cheap new materials we can do for agricultural that we just started, and now it's the flagship. But in the long run, we do think onshoring, onboarding, and doing more advanced manufacturing, especially pharmaceutical in St. Louis, would be a very, very big advantage. But that's just my general thoughts. It's really not about exciting things, but really thinking St. Louis being a very uniquely positioned city. But I'll hand over the microphone.
Good point, Rick. What about you, Ola? Can you briefly share how you decided to start your own company?
So I decided to start my company primarily because I came from an entrepreneurial background. My parents were entrepreneurs back in Nigeria where I was born. And one of the things that make me come to the US was I wanted to do something that is greater than what my father did. Actually, I wanted to outdo him. That was it. That was the whole idea. I wanted to outdo him. He wanted me to stay and manage one of his companies. He did very well for himself, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something on my own and prove to him that, hey, I can go and make it on my own, Dad. I don't want to do yours. So in 2013, I moved to St. Louis because I won an Arch grant. And prior to that time, I had started a separate company. That was my second company called Eateria. So we won the Arch grant plus some other winning from Microsoft and some other companies. Then I moved here. And when I got here in the first year, that's actually when I met Betsy. Betsy was one of my greatest champions because she really advocated for me. So the place of networking with people is very, very key. And I will tell you why that is key. So I got to town, won the Arch grant, studied in Eateria, and we were told there are so many developers here, but unfortunately, that was not the case. The big companies have hired all the developers away, so the small companies couldn't move forward. So my company, Eateria, in 2014, was one of the top, fastest growing startup in St. Louis. But we got to a point we couldn't grow further because we couldn't find developers. So I was very frustrated. You know, we needed software developers, we couldn't grow. So I was asking around, why is that there are no developers here? And what I found out was that the bigger companies were souping them up very quickly, and the small startup doesn't have a play. So I got tired of it. I said, I'm going to fix this problem. And because I said I was going to fix this problem because of the pain I had, that is what made me started Claim Academy back at the end of 2014. I registered the company in 2015. We launched our first class of 4, and then from there to 6, then to 8. And we've graduated since that time, over 600 people now out of Claim Academy. And now we are now national and well-known. So St. Louis is a place for me. I would say St. Louis is really good for me, and it's good to me. You know, and I would say that anywhere publicly when people complain a lot about there are no opportunities here, I said, well, maybe you didn't look enough. There's a lot of opportunities here. And I also want to say there's something about immigrant people that makes a little bit of uniqueness in how we see things. As an immigrant, you have no excuse to go back to where you come from and say you failed when you went to America. In all other countries, people look at you and say, hey, you're in America, that's where there's milk and honey, right? That's where everybody who is given a chance. And when you come here, we know we don't have a chance, we don't have any opportunity, we don't have any excuse. And Raj and Greek, you guys know what I mean. When you go back to, you know, India, even you, Gabriela, if you go out to Mexico and you came to America and you say you didn't make it, they look at you like, are you kidding me? So you have that charge that no matter the environment, you have to win. It's a driver, no matter what. I mean, I was listening to Elon Musk this morning. He talked about his background because I'm getting one of my sons ready to probably do something very similar. He likes cars and he wants to design cars. So we've been going through that path. But the point is, St. Louis, no matter what the challenges can be, if you network, I network to people like Betsy. Betsy was really championing, giving me introduction to people. I mean, she will call people for me. I remember, I would never forget. So those type of people who are championing and helping you, they have a lot of really good people locally who are just out for you. I'm sure Raj with Arch Grant, you know, Jerry Chitler, you know, they're out there. Jerry will pick up the phone and say, hey, Ola, you need to meet this person. You need to call this person. They will sit down and take their time and send emails on our behalf. And that's how we're able to plug in. So St. Louis is really good, I would say. I would rather be a big fish in a small pond than be a small fish in a big pond. And so that's just my opening. I think there are a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs and people who can really work like that. Raj, 8 hours. Some of us work 12 hours a day. All of us. It's not easy, but you know that's what you have to do to make a difference. You have to go the extra mile. So that's key right here.
Thank you, Ola. And you are so right on so many fronts. We give up the 9 to 5 to work 9 to 9, right?
That's right.
And networking is amazing. And Betsy Cohen is amazing. She's been
absolutely.
a great advocate.
She's here on the call. Give it up for her.
Yes, definitely. What about you, Raj? Can you share briefly how you decided to start your own company?
Yes, absolutely. So I came to US as an international student, and while I was fortunate to find my first job with Monsanto, then co-start a business and do my own journey and have luck with immigration. I know a lot of people who don't have that same luck in immigration, who won't find their first jobs after they come here as graduate students or undergraduate students. And the problem exists. I think Ola mentioned it as well, that the larger companies don't have problems getting the talent that they want, but the smaller companies do. So I saw that problem as well, which existed with smaller companies, and I thought, well, we are getting all this talent into the United States every year. Why not help them find better jobs? The way we are solving that problem is by making it easier for employers to hire these foreign nationals, so that they can actually hire the best global talent, and they're not just limited to people who are just around them.
Amazing. All of you have kind of said, my business is not that exciting, but you guys are changing lives and doing amazing things, not just for the region, but a bigger platform than that. And I know that as an entrepreneur myself, there are so many pieces to being a business owner or an entrepreneur. So Ola, what are one or two misconceptions that you have or have encountered being an entrepreneur in St. Louis?
That's an interesting question. Well, I wouldn't say that I have misconception. I knew what I had to do as a person to excel. I knew what I had to do. I mean, just like you said, Gabriela, 9 to 9. First, you have to work harder than an average person in order to succeed. That is a fundamental rule of success. But you also know that in some cases, you may face uh, cultural barriers that are set out by whether it's institutional, whether it's racial, whether it's perception that somebody has. So, for instance, I get sometimes people, they say, "Oh, you African?" And I say, "Yeah, I was born in West Africa." And they go, "Well, you're not really an African American." I've been told that. I've been really told that. And I don't care really, because I'm mission minded. I'm focused on whatever I need to do. So you have to be able to look beyond any obstacle in front of you, that somebody has a different perception of you or what you can achieve or who you are or what have you. I think as an entrepreneur, we have a different mindset, that there's no obstacle, there's only opportunities in front of us. So for me, if there are any mindset that I have to have, the mindset is that there's no barrier in front of me. Every barrier is an opportunity. That's the way I see things. But not everyone sees things that way. So that's my own perception. My perception is, no matter what, I would outwork, I would outdo, and I will outconnect anyone so that I can do well. And so with that mindset, I mean, I was just even telling my son this yesterday. I say, well, people come from China, and the guy came to Seattle on a ship. He doesn't even speak English. And he started his first job. I know this particular person. He started his first job as a bus boy. And before you know it, he got a job in Chicago. He moved down. And 4 years later, he owned, with some people, a restaurant in the community. And 10 years later, he owns 2 buildings, the building, the restaurant, and his own building. And by the time I left Chicago, he and his other guys who were Chinese, they couldn't even speak English. At that point, they owned 3 stores down the street. So I said to my son, you that you were born in America, you son, you can't give an excuse why you cannot succeed. You have no excuse, no matter what, no matter the barrier, I don't care. You have to do well. Because if somebody can come from another place and they couldn't speak English, had to sleep on the dock for the first 2 days just to get in, you have no excuse. So it's all goes back, for me, it's all goes back to mindset. To no matter what, keep going. If you cannot fly, run. If you cannot run, walk. If you cannot walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving.
That's a lot of responsibility. But I totally understand. I wish that we had more time to delve a little bit into that whole mindset and how our culture frames some of that. But hopefully we'll have some time at the end to cover some of that. Raj, what about you? What's one misconception that you have encountered being an entrepreneur or a startup company in St. Louis?
I won't say I have any particular misconceptions about St. Louis. I've been in St. Louis for a long period of time, and this is my being a part of second or third startup at this point. I understood what the ecosystem was all about. My misconception was around getting rejected, and how do you take rejections as an entrepreneur? And I think it's fairly generally speaking, everybody has to go through that. Over the years now, I've started to realize I still take rejections personally, and it's hard. But when you're trying to create a new product, trying to create a new service, that's something that will happen to you.
Right.
So now I think rejections should be taken as a part of as a data set for you to make better decisions. If you are getting rejected over and over again by your prospects, that means you don't have a product market fit. If you are getting rejected over and over again by somebody in your team, that means that team member is not a good fit with your company. So early on, as quickly as you realize that these are just data points and they don't define you as a person and your company, the better it is for you to actually move on.
Yes, and that's a very good point, because as entrepreneurs, we learn/fail often, right? So the idea is that every time a door is closed, it's a learning opportunity. How do I either better what I'm trying to sell, or perhaps my project is the next best thing, but I'm not promoting it well, or I'm not explaining to people what it does, right? So really understanding the failing forward, as Bomi mentioned in the chat, that the rejection is beyond us as individuals and entrepreneurs and business owners. And I also think that a lot of times we're in love with our idea, right? You can't tell my husband he doesn't make the best tacos in the world, but not everybody has the same palate. And so you have to also understand that. Rick, I see you laughing back there. What about you? What's one or two misconceptions that you've encountered in your entrepreneurial journey?
Thank you so much. And I think both Ola and Raj, you have very inspirational things to say. And I will talk about something that's slightly sadder. And I don't want to say it's my personal misconception anymore, but it is a misconception that I do hear and I used to have. And that misconception is there is no money in St. Louis. And I want to say that it is partially true. Partially true in the sense that if you're counting the amount of raised venture capital, especially if you remove the largest or the second largest deal, then you realize there's only kind of tens of millions of dollars raised by all the other companies in St. Louis. And that is a drop in the bucket if you're comparing to San Francisco or Boston, where my family lives. And that is true in the sense that the amount of venture capital funding raised by the smaller startups in St. Louis is limited. But money is not just venture capital money. And actually, there's a lot of money flowing in St. Louis. I want to give you some examples. There are actually many tax credits, many kinds of different tax credits, which were actually not fully used due to a lack of appealing projects year after year. There are philanthropic venture, there are grants, and of course, there are eventually paying customers. Of course, I don't want to say this, but there's also a lot of quote unquote old money in St. Louis. The general idea is there are a lot of sources of funding and support. It is true. Venture is in a way relatively neglected in St. Louis, but there are many sources of support and opportunity in St. Louis waiting to be kind of utilized or fully utilized.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think that that's a mind shift for a lot of entrepreneurs when they don't realize that support / capital can be in many different forms, not just actual cash in your bank account. So thank you for saying that, Rick. What about if you could go back to the beginning of your journey? Ola, let's start with you. What advice would you give yourself? What would you do more of or less of?
Well, I think if I were to go back, the first company I started was about 12 years ago. So this clinic is the third company I've started now. And one of the things I learned in that first company was if I were going to start a tech company, I better know how to code or how to be a programmer. I joined, so when I first started that company, it was my idea, and I learned the hard way. It was my idea. I was working for Bristol Myers Squibb. And so I was also doing an MBA at University of Chicago at that time. And the guy that I hired to be my tech guy, once it was brought up, once we declared that, the company came up with some new concept and we were featured in Time magazine, he just immediately went to his lawyer and said he wanted 50% of the company. Now, I was the one who gave all the money towards the development. All he did was just technology contribution. I paid for everybody. I was the one, did everything. I mean, so that taught me a big lesson. And we didn't have anything. I signed it. I was going to give him 3% of the company. But at the end of the day, I had to abandon the whole project because they locked it and we couldn't move forward. So I had to change the name of the company and start it all over again. So that was a very painful experience. So I knew that next time if I'm going to do something, is either I know how to program or I have enough money to hire a whole team somewhere and pay them. So the next time I started the first one, I had a team in Germany and in India who did the software for me, and I paid everybody outright. So if you would ask me what was the lesson, if you're going to do something, especially with technology, you better choose your partners very well. That was the first lesson I learned. Choose your partners very well. You either be the unicorn partner, or if you're bringing the next person, I mean, the guy was from the same country I was born, but he really, he taught me a big lesson. So that was one first thing I learned. The second thing I would say, if I were to go back, was to make sure that I really, I worked hard to make sure I really spent a lot of time with product market fit. I had to switch after the first one. I switched to a different one, and that one became one where that actually took off really well. So product market fit was one big thing that I had to do. And thirdly, you have to save money. If you're a family man with 2 children, you have to save a lot of money, or you're doing it little by little in order to grow it, which is something I ended up doing. So it took us a longer time. But if I were to do it again, I would actually just save a lot of money once we start making money, then quit the other one and move on. So those are the lessons that I learned if I were to go back in my first company.
Very good points. And you bring up a great point about the partnerships. I also would say maybe your contracts, right? That also goes in line with what are the agreements that you have signed or not signed. And I've been burned there myself a couple of times. So I totally get it, Ola. What about you, Raj? If you could go back to the beginning of your journey, what advice would you give yourself? What would you do more of or less?
Yes, so I think I'm echoing most of the things that Ola mentioned, but a little more philosophically, I wanted to say I'd actually tell myself to fall in love with the problem and not the solution, and that's a huge problem that I see over and over again, just with myself every single day. You want to understand what the problem actually is, not how your solution. How that problem fits into your solution. You got to build a solution around the problem. Mostly as entrepreneurs, we basically go about creating a solution first, and because that's technology these days, it's easy to create a solution in your own isolation. So yeah, just fall in love with the problem, understand what's what's happening, why is it happening, before you even put a penny towards creating a solution. Secondly, something that I've realized much late in my career is save your time and spend money where you can actually, utilize your time towards building the business forward. Coming from India, I have this mentality that I want to save every single penny that I can with the 50,000 grant that we got from Marsh grants, only to realize that what I was doing is causing a bottleneck for my own company's growth. So things like writing articles, it's just a simple example. I don't have to write those articles. I can actually pay somebody else to do that. And there's a reason why people do that, so that you can actually sit and work on strategies. So those sort of things, I think those are two big lessons that I have. And apart from what Ola said, I think ethics with founders, they definitely have to match. I'm very lucky that I have the best founder I could find, and we're happily married in this company that we're working on.
That's great to hear that you're not having any problems, but I hope you have that contract in place.
Yes, we do.
Perfect. What about you, Rick? Going back to when you first started Volpes, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, thank you. So first I want to say actually my primary advice will merely be repeating what Ola and also Raj were saying, and in a very particular way is I wish at the very early stage of doing my startup, I could have gone to Venture Cafe or Seed a lot earlier and more often. The idea is this may not look like it, but I'm a very shy person. I think I have some ideas I want to hone in, make sure it is better before I share with others. But what I've learned, of course, is it's really useful to have early feedback and early multiple iterations to see how wrong you are when you're alone and get a lot more feedback. And in that way, I'm just merely repeating and adding to Raj and Ola. But I want to just say one more thing, and that is when I was doing this startup early, I should have found a lot more social impact or social cost. The idea is, of course, we're doing business, we're trying to make money and grow a business. But very often, the important way to resonate with other people is to emphasize on the social consequences, social impact of your business. Besides making money, how we are making the world better, and that can get a lot more people involved, not necessarily to give you money, but to really fight for a cause together. And I really should have thought about those issues much earlier.
Yes, I think that also goes in line with what Raj was talking about, falling in love with the problem and not the solution, right? And then someone mentioned networking early on. I'm shy too, so I totally understand that. But if it's okay with you, Ola, Raj, and Rick, I'd like to open up for some Q&A. And what I'm thinking is that I'll just go ahead and have people unmute as I call on them. So please, if you have a question and you want to be called on, put it in the chat so that I can call you. And we'll start with Kelly. Kelly, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the panelists your question directly?
You mean my question about why they chose to start in St. Louis and stay in St. Louis?
Yes.
Yeah, that's my question.
Well, I like to go first. Why did I come to St. Louis? I'll tell you. Actually, until I won Arch Grant, I really didn't know anything about St. Louis. Honestly, I really didn't know anything. I know St. Louis just on the map, never been there, didn't know much about it. But when I came here for the Arch Grant business plan competition, first and the second finals, I was stunned when I did my research. I said, oh, wow, this place has all this? This is like a hidden place that people don't want you to know about. And quickly I realized that the quality of life here is much better than where I was coming from in the suburb of Chicago, where it's so dense and there's just a whole lot of people. And once I settled in here, I was able to quickly get a lot of things done. Like I said early on, I'm very thankful to people like Betsy. I remember when we first met, Jerry Schittler. I can start naming names that are great champions for me in many areas. Like I said, St. Louis has been good to me. I have the mission that we have at Clean Academy is to change lives. I mean, very quickly, I became somebody who joined boards. I'm on the board of some major boards in town now that I don't think if I were in Chicago, I probably would be doing that, to be honest with you. Just to be able to come here and be part of the solution, just like Rick said, is key. And that is the way I look at things since I've been here. When I saw people like Betsy, I saw people like Jerry, I saw what they're doing. I go, wow, these individuals are just so dedicated to empowerment, to growth, to betterment for people and for the region. I see Dick Fleming here also, I see what these guys are doing. I'm like, wow, I want to do that too. I want to help people. I want to be an impact to the solution that we're having. At the end of the day, posterity, we're judged by what we do and how we help other people and not what we have. So I choose that perception quickly. I learned that very quickly once I started out here, and I tell you, it's been very good. I get a lot of support. I get a lot of really great champions in town, and I always say that I can see further because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Wow, that's impressive. I love that. What about you, Raj? Why did you choose St. Louis?
St. Louis chose me, I'd say. I was destined to go to USC for my graduate degree, but then Missouri S&T offered full scholarship, and I came here. So did my girlfriend at that time. She came here, and she's my wife now. Eventually got to St. Louis, and then started my MBA at California in Los Angeles, and then a friend of mine who I worked with at Monsanto pulled me back into St. Louis, saying, "Oh, I'm starting this company. Why don't you come join me?" Now, one thing about St. Louis that I realized as a startup founder is startups are all about running small experiments. And St. Louis is a great place to run small experiments. You have the right ecosystem, you have the right economy, you can actually take an idea. There's enough data points that you can gather with the companies here, with the people here, and then replicate it for a larger city. If you were in a larger city, the biggest problem is going to be cost and sustainability. I can actually make do a lot with the $50,000 that we got through Arch grants here in St. Louis than I would ever be able to do anywhere else in the United States. But that said, I think what Ola mentioned, there's a great ecosystem of support as well. I have numerous examples where I've been able to actually just pick up a phone and call people, and they were there to help. Suzanne is one of those people that I've actually talked to every now and then, and she's always there to help. And you can't find that in a larger city.
That's true.
Yeah, it really feels like St. Louis seems big, but once you're here and you start to get tapped into the ecosystem, everybody knows everybody and you're connected very easily. Rick, what about you? Why did you choose St. Louis?
Well, thank you. It seems like I'm now mostly just echoing Ola and Raj, and it's really the same. Actually, WashU basically paid me while they give me my full kind of doctoral scholarship, so I came here into St. Louis for the first time. And before that, I did not even know St. Louis was a city. But now the way I look at St. Louis is this: a lot of things that I agree with Raj and Ola, that there are a lot of opportunities. It's very tightly connected city. It's easy to find ways to contribute. I do want to say one thing. That is, my family lives in Boston. And as many know, Boston is a very kind of heated startup city. And what I've found easily is, as a general rule, a heated market normally or tends to create some kind of overvaluation, while a neglected market tends to create undervaluation. That makes a good investment opportunity. And that's how I think about my startup. I think St. Louis is having a lot of underappreciated assets, especially because I'm repeating myself talking about infrastructure and also talents in advanced manufacturing or want to move to advanced manufacturing. And that's why I'm kind of based and I'm now living in St. Louis, thinking this is a big opportunity to take advantage of while contributing to the city that's looking for transformation.
Thank you, Rick. And Douglas, you had asked a question about cultural competency. Can you unmute yourself and ask our panelists?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the question I asked is new companies are always looking for the things that make them valuable. And if you come from or your business does things that come from a cultural nexus, the question is that a value that you can put some kind of dollar value to? It gives investors something to see a value in the fact that you're culturally diverse. I'll give you an example. So after the Cold War, when the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc nations fell apart, one of the hottest commodities that we looked for in the United States was, guess what? Communications software engineers from Russia and in Eastern Europe. Do you know why? Because the communist economy was so poor at providing hardware for people to develop their software on, everyone had to work on paper to design programs. So your average engineer from Hungary that was working in software communications would write code for the early stage phones with 50 lines of code, where an American engineer with a plethora of technology resources would take 1,000 lines. Now, I offer that just to say that made, in a way, however you care to put it, a certain intangible value to those skills that were really part of the cultural experience of where that person came from or where people were coming from or what their environment was providing them. Now, one of the things that's the other phrase is that, necessity is the mother of invention. So one of the things oddly to look for is where scarcity in a mother culture creates creativity in a current culture. By the way, the model also works in depressed communities within a common nation state. So I just asked out there if you think about that. I find, by the way, full disclosure, I invest in intangible assets. So it's a way that we actually do that to provide capital to new businesses.
Thank you, Douglas. Ola, Rick, or Raj, anybody want to tackle that one or comments?
Yeah, I mean, Ola, you want to go first? That's fine. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Reg. So Douglas, to your question, if I understand it very well, how does maybe one's background or ethnicity or where you come from, how does that affect, how we probably see things or do things, if I'm correct with that? I think if I look at it from one standpoint of scarcity, so I was born in West Africa, Nigeria, even though my parents were entrepreneurs. And one of the interesting things, though, in the country was that we have instability of bad leaders who are corrupt. However, we have a very strong institutional educational system that is British, that helps people to go to school very quickly. And really because of the toughness of the environment, anywhere an average Nigerian American or Nigerian goes to, they excel. They just excel. You can look at it, you can do the data. One of the top places, top professions, top group in America is Nigerian American. And one of the reasons is the toughness and the sheer family value, dedication to hard work that is known for Nigerian Americans. So I could speak about that. However, with what I currently do, Claim Academy, for instance, we serve everyone. And I usually make a joke again. I jokingly tell my family, I'll say, well, if Oprah Winfrey only focuses on African-American people alone, she's not going to be where she is today. So if I say, oh, I came to town and I only want to focus on these, no, 78% of our target audience who are come to Claim Academy are white males, for instance. And we help a lot of people who are, African American. We also have a lot of people who are Africans. So I was just messaging Jeffrey Soyen, who is rare from Vindento, Africa. There's so many people from Kenya, Uganda, all of them that have come to Claim Academy that we've trained that are working at top Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies in this region today. So I would say that, and I'm sure Raj and Rick can attest to that. We just look for a problem, a big enough problem, and create a solution. And as you know, one of the things that many of us has to come with is we have no excuse but to succeed. I always say that jokingly. When I was doing a TED Talk many years ago, I said that. I said, don't always ask what, like JF Kennedy said, don't always ask what America can do for you. Ask what can you do for America? So I always say, don't ask what St. Louis can do for you. Ask what can you do for St. Louis? How can you be a solution to this region? How can you add value? And so when we have that kind of a mindset, Douglas, that Raj and Rick had said, that how can we play a part in the development and the growth of a major American city? It's an honor for any of us to be part of that. Maybe where we come from, we might not be able to do that. Raj, if you go back to India tomorrow and say, hey, I want to do this, I say, oh, we have an established system, and after the longer you live here, it's hard to fit in also over there. Same thing. So having an opportunity where it's not based on where you're from or whoever, just finding a solution big enough and being able to, go after it. I'm sure, Gabriela, with your own restaurant, most of the folks that come there are probably not people from Mexican descent. They are probably, white or Caucasian or African American or those. Typically, why? Because you have good food, people are going to come. So that's my answer to that.
Yes, very true. Raj, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I defer from Ola on that. I usually don't stereotype people coming from the same country. So Douglas, to your question, I definitely know that there's enough research to prove that diverse teams are smarter. They make better decisions. But I don't think investors invest based on where a founder is from. I think it's all metrics driven. It doesn't matter if you are from India or Africa or somewhere else. If you are you need investment, it's majorly driven by metrics and not by your skin color or by your background. So that's my differentiation in the thought process, that I won't stereotype people coming from one country that they are just that sort of people, right? Because people are varied, and I've come across as varied people with different experiences and different skill sets. So those are my 2 cents.
That's interesting, but I just don't think the world is that egalitarian yet. And there's a real struggle to basically rationalize diversity. And I think if you can show that there are values that unique backgrounds, and as an individual coming from from whatever background you come from, you need to bring that forward, because if that has value, it says everyone has value and they can define it uniquely, but to a common denominator of a value that's worthy of investment for enterprise. And while it's always ugly in one sense to just say, well, there's a money value to it, it's also very, if you will, decolorizing, because it's really only about the value that is effectively transmitted. And that, I don't know, call it tough love if you want to, but it's fair across the board. And the same thing can be said. By the way, there's such thing as negative brand equity too. People that that practice, pretty ugly racism and xenophobic ideas have negative brand equity because they point out they can't work with anybody except a certain type. So what I'm saying is that I pointed out because it really is unattractive to talk about, and yet it's fundamental to creating equal value and equality of opportunity and things. If you can point it out as dollars, then people have less problem with the color green for whatever reason that is. But
Right.
that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, Doug, I'd like to follow up with you to see how we could put a value on our cultural competency. But
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
we'll save that.
Funny you should ask that.
We'll save that for another conversation. Let me go on to Karen. Karen, do you want to unmute yourself? Karen Hoshino, if I pronounced that correctly, and ask your question from our panels.
Thank you so much. One of my questions that I'm really interested is like, how do you like generate new ideas to keep your business competitive?
Yeah, Rick, why don't you take that, dude? We haven't actually let you speak at all.
Correct.
So go for it.
Oh, thank you. And actually, humbly, I actually don't think I have good ideas, because if there are very useful ways to generate $1 billion ideas, I would be on there first. But the general idea is this. I just want to say a little bit about my background. My background is in the humanities. I'm actually trained in philosophy, which means I know absolutely nothing about any of the technical questions. If you want to ask me how, the chemicals work, I have no idea. That's why the way I generate idea is not that I have my favorite idea that I'm self-indulgent in, because I just don't have anything other than if you want to talk about Plato. However, there are always market demands, that things people need, things people want, that never got responded to, or if there was not a good solution. And that's why I read really a lot of magazines and newspapers. I wake up every day reading 5 daily newspapers every single day. And even today, my first meeting starts at 9. I still finish my newspaper just to see what's out there and what is needed, and to see if I have the right connection and network to put people and resources together to solve those questions. I know that's probably not a very easy or happy answer, but I bet Raj or Ola have better ideas.
I think it's a great point. Just to add quickly to this, and then I'll pass this on to Ola, because I'm sure he has more experience with this. So I think testing your hypotheses is very important. I think Rick mentioned this early on. You might have an idea, right? And I don't think there's anybody here, including Elon Musk, who has brilliant ideas every single day or every single week in their life. It's all about when you start talking to people, what do you find? What are they struggling with? And is that something that you can actually make money off of? I think that's something to look at. I think a lot of people think that, if they talk about their idea or whatever they're thinking about, somebody's going to steal their idea. Ideas are worth nothing at all.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. It's the execution that matters.
That's
you could
right.
have you could have thought about Uber 10 years ago, right? But if you did not execute on it, you did not make that money. Now, a part of that in branching down is, the more you talk about your idea, the more it morphs. And coming to that point about falling in love with the problem and not the solution, don't build a solution in your head and then go and test that solution out. Easier said than done, right? Talk to people, as many people as you can, about the problems that you're trying to solve, and they'll give you the problems that they have, and that basically leads to more discussions. And that's how Waylet basically came into existence, right? So those are my 2 cents.
Ola, what about you? And I'm going to rush you because we only have a few more minutes.
Yeah, I think they've said most of the things that need to be said. The only thing I like to add is that, when it comes to, I think the question she was asking when I'm reading it, that Karen asked, is how do you generate new ideas to keep your business competitive? And to keep your current business competitive, you always have to think ahead and kind of research what is out there, like Rick said. For us at Claim Academy, we're going to have certain announcements in the next couple of weeks where we're partnering with universities, where we're partnering with military installations, to launch boot camps for them. We're partnering with companies to launch specific boot. So we have those things in the works for several months now that we just kept it under wraps because we don't think that we should be talking about it all over the place. Those are the things that you have to do to remain competitive. We can't say, okay, well, we have one business model and that's the only thing we're going to focus on. We want to grow, we want to scale, but we want to do it in a measurable way that makes sense and it adds value to the current business model so that it doesn't change. So those are the things that you have to keep in mind. You have to read, like Rick said, and you have to execute. It's all about execution, like Raj said. So they've said really, really key things, Karen. And if you do that, you're going to be successful.
So I wasn't kidding about the 9 to 5, the 9 to 9, right? We're
No,
reading
you're not.
magazines, we're, talking to people, sharing, and our time has come to an end. So I just want to thank everyone. Thanks our panelists. We are so grateful for this opportunity to meet you, our listening audience, wherever you may be in your entrepreneurial journey. And I encourage you to reach out to the panelists on LinkedIn or, social media is an amazing resource right now. Also, sometimes it's hard to find an entry point, but I'm sure if you reach out, you'll begin to get plugged into the business ecosystem. I would be remiss if I did not share our upcoming programming at the Center for Emerging Technology. So be sure to check out both of those at cetstl.com. The Square One Ignite program applications are open now. And then the Square One Bootcamp will be opening up in June. So again, if you want to learn more about any of these, all of the details are at cetstl.com. We also want to make sure that we share with you that WePower's Elevate Elevar application is open. They are taking applications for their next cohort of Black Latinx entrepreneurs, which will be open through the 5th of February. Details will be put in the chat and we'll be sending out some information. So again, thank you, Raj, Rick, and Ola for being trailblazers and for sharing your insight this afternoon. Thank you so much to the St. Louis Mosaic Project for bringing us together. And of course, Venture Cafe St. Louis for the opportunity to convene and to be a part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in St. Louis. Thank you, everybody.